To an NBC News scoop here with our team learning President Biden's top advisors are quietly assembling a 2024 campaign. The president's team talking more about who might manage that kind of operation, potential themes, according to people familiar with the planning, 9 of them. The president and his team coming off a few big wins, most recently the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. And then his polling seems to be getting better. His approval rating going up from 36% about a month ago to now right around 45%. One of the folks in the byline of that story is NBC News senior national politics reporter John Allen. And you're talking about, John, a couple of things here, that this current plan for the campaign, and yes, it is still, Election Day 2024 is still 2+ years away, but it would rely heavily on the DNC. It's kind of more the Bill Clinton model than the Barack Obama model. Talk to us about it.
Absolutely, Hallie. I did this story with Carol Lee and Mike Memoli and Peter Nicholas, 3 of our great colleagues. Basically, what you're looking at is Biden building up the DNC, as he has been through the course of his presidency. Barack Obama preferred to build his own campaign and his outside organization, Organizing for America. What Biden is doing here is putting a ton of resources into the DNC, and there are a lot of reasons that matters. The biggest one is that the DNC has joint operating agreements. It's a little wonky here, but with all of the 50 states, which means that they're able to raise as much as $875,000 a year from a single donor. And from each single donor, and then they can give unlimited funds to those state parties, which means that the state parties can set up a lot of the field operations, a lot of the work a campaign would normally do, and take that off of the shoulders of a campaign that would, in this case, be a little more skeletal.
You and Carol and Peter and Mem write that some key campaign decisions on strategy and personnel are on hold ahead of the midterms. And as polls show, Democrats have a better chance of holding on to the House and the Senate than they did just several months ago. We talked about the sort of improving approval ratings for President Biden. Talk about how that factors into this.
It's a great question, Hallie. So whether it's in the White House or outside the White House, Biden really has the same inner circle right now. They're looking at, Deputy White House Chief of Staff Jen O'Malley Dillon as somebody who would have a big role in a campaign, whether that's from the White House in the political office or as the campaign chairman or possibly reprising her role as campaign manager, though most people think she wouldn't do that. But the big question is, at what point does it make sense to start releasing people from the White House and onto the campaign trail? And if Biden has Democrats in charge in the House and Senate, he'll be able to do a much more aggressive legislative agenda and may want to keep some of those folks on board inside the White House rather than moving them into the political arena.
Do the people you're talking to feel like some of the will he, won't he chatter has kind of died down as the president has made clear, or at least said publicly, that he intends to run again?
I think certainly that's part of it, Hallie. There are several factors. So number one, I talked to Cedric Richmond for this story, the former White House advisor who is now over at the DNC, and he said flatly that President Biden is running and they are building the DNC for 2024, which will help for the midterms in 2022. So you can see where that thinking is. But in addition to that, I think there's some other things that have been helpful to President Biden. The specter of former President Trump running, the real raison d'etre for Biden's run in 2020 remains on the battlefield, and many Democrats believe that President Biden is the best candidate for the Democrats against Trump specifically. So while Trump is in the news after the raid at Mar-a-Lago, and as we continue to see these investigations into him and some of his closest allies, that's helpful for Biden. It unifies Democrats behind him, and what we see in those polling changes, a lot of what we see in those polling changes, more positive for Biden as Democrats coming home to him.
John Allen, thank you much. Good to see you.